kids earn salary, they spend their own salary. And what we do is we spend about 4 to 5 months only in designing the concept. So it starts with that crux. So all our concepts are designed keeping in mind the child psychologists, the educationalist, and that is what gives us that edge. What we've learned is delight can only happen when a parent comes and tells us our child, who is inadvertently so shy, suddenly was leading the firefighter brigade charge and he was going all out. Likewise, we had a classic example where a mother wrote to us that her daughter, who used to love being a policeman every time she visited Kidzania, one day she went to the Times of India reporting activity. She journaled a newspaper report and she suddenly found her way in writing. And today she is an author, she's written books. So this for us is delight. There is no secret sauce to it. But what we've realized, there are only two aspects. That design is not decoration. You may think, you can make a beautiful looking establishment, have the best of interiors, have an interactive LED screen. Those are all just frills. Eventually, what is the activity, and if it can give some emotion out, that is something which will help in exceeding the expectation.
Wonderful. What about you?
I think to keep it very simple, we have to first look at who is your audience that you're talking to, because that really matters. We get a diaspora from, let's say, a smaller city to somebody like a Bangalore coming into our parks. Now the demands of these audiences are very, very different, and delight to all of them are very different. So we begin from this first question of who is the customer that we are talking to. In fact, when we were designing one of our new rides, we said this is for preteens. So I remember my team, and we said, how do we know what the preteens want? What is the design that should be there? What should we name the thing? So we had about 11 children in this age bracket who were there at our park at 7 in the morning, and we were sitting with them, and their parents were also there. And initially the parents started talking. I said, ma'am, I don't think we know what we are talking about, right? Because the parents said, no, we should name it this. And the kids were like, hey, what? This is so uncool. And they clearly knew. And then we went through that evolution in a matter of an hour. How should the ride look? What should be named? And they were like, so perfectly they knew the answer to it, right? So you begin from delight of who you are trying to delight, and you begin from the actual inception of the idea. And then as we take it ahead, I always tell my team, and this is what we measure in our NPS and everywhere, there are 4 things that keep a customer happy. How well did you take care of them in terms of staff? Then cleanliness and hygiene plays a huge role in India. Then of course, maja. I call it maja, meaning fun. And the 4th one is food. If you do these 4 things well, then you've done a lot of things really well. And when it comes to delight, I'll give some examples which maybe we can take back and implement very easily. Our staff used to take really good care of the people and all of that. But one small thing happened one day where I'm a hawk when it comes to reviews and our NPS rating and all of that. There was one comment which a customer said, and that customer said, I really felt so happy when your staff called me to the ride and made me sit on it. And then we said, okay, now we have to implement this everywhere. So now what happens, our staff stands at the ride and they say, madam, please come and enjoy the ride. And we can't believe how big of a difference this has done, because just that one thing, the staff has become more accountable, customer feels welcome. So that happened. And if you allow me, I'll tell you another story. So I had this customer, Sachin, right? And I told Sachin, so I was just walking through the park and I asked Sachin, so what do you think? He said, no, you guys give courage. I said, what courage? What are you talking about? So he said, so Ashwin, I came with my mother and it's her birthday, right? So my mother's 55 years old and I came with her for her birthday, and she was there at the top, and I went on one of the slides, I reached the bottom. And I'm standing at the bottom and I see that my mother's standing there and she's hesitant to come. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll go up and I'll bring her back down. And then a few minutes later, I see my mom's enjoying the ride and she's coming down. And I said, so what happened? Why are you talking about courage? She said, you know what happened? The staff there said, Madam, don't worry. I've seen older people than you go on the ride. Right? I've seen older people than you go on the ride. I take guarantee for you, you go on it. Now this lady who's 50 or 55 years old, she took that slide, she came down, and now she's taken this back. So as Taran said, it's not always about look and feel. It's not always about making it look really nice. All these are taken for granted in a sense, but then this extra element that we add on top of it, the stories that we create in the park. And one thing that we have seen is whenever we catch on to a story, then we see how do we amplify this? How do we make this repeatable? How do we scale, in a sense, delight? Right? How do we scale delight is something that we, of course, try and experiment, and that's something that we do. But then it's a never-ending story. It's not something that comes to an end on a particular day.
Yeah, no, I think you touched on like the social proofing ideas, and I think you raised a very good point on amplifying elements, right? So I think all of us will have certain stories or certain things that have happened, but then how do you take that and then amplify it to make it work at scale is the bigger question. So over to you, Alistair.
So, firstly, thank you all. So I come in from the FEC space, right, specifically, just to kind of touch upon a little use cases. So one of the things which we really do well is something which we call as journeys, all right? So what happens is, for every customer, we have a milestone-based reward program. So what happens is, one of the key features of this program is to ensure that there is always some sort of a design which is defined in a manner which can drive delight for customers. And the second thing which it obviously does is repeat visitations, which is very, very important for our business, because we're just not talking about footfall. We're trying to understand what kind of feelings, what kind of friction points which would be there for customers to kind of step into your store. And more importantly, what are we trying to future-proof in this particular industry, right? Because end of the day, if you don't have the right set of customers walking down your door, it becomes very challenging for us as a business to kind of have this momentum going on. So in the course of this journey, what happens is, there is a lot of incentives which we kind of offer to customers on a real-time basis, and it is not just incentives which is related to gamification or incentives which is related to rewards or any awards as such in general. It is more to do with cross-shopping experience. So what happens there is, as and when the customer keeps coming back, the one which you explained, the peak and rule, there is always something which is left for the customer to kind of come back and revisit on the entire experience. So I feel delight as a factor is very important in terms of driving repeat visits. Delight also drives Instagram stories as well, where
Right.
a lot of Gen Z kind of put it across in picture. And most importantly, I feel it helps us to build brand advocates, even for kids or be it parents or any target group which you're actually catering to.
Yeah, no, I think again, very good point in terms of retention and how delight plays a big part in that. One of the things that I have found in my work as such is when people think about incentives, automatically people are thinking in terms of monetary aspects. But a lot of times these incentives don't have to be monetary at all. It can be just special access, a different journey path, something which is exclusive, which is not monetary in nature. And that itself, creates a different version of how you can think about repeat visits and delight and so on. Yeah. So you also touched upon Gen Zs. So let's push to that question in terms of how has your experience been? Like, I think with Kidzania, you're dealing with not even Gen Zs now, right? It's, I don't know what, Gen Alphas now? How is engagement over there different compared to what you've seen before? What are you doing in terms of reaching out to these audiences?
So when we look at Gen Alphas, today, so I am lucky that I have a godson who's 7. And I think as a marketer, I've matured a lot over the last 7-8 years because I've been surrounded by my friends who have kids in the same age bracket. Now coming back to your question, the most important difference between kids of today and, if I may say, when we were kids, is that they look at really immersive experiences. We were in a way very passive, okay? And we just wanted to either play or have fun. today when we did a research at Kidzania, which new profession they would like to experience, 70% of the kids had one answer, which is a YouTuber. And likewise, we launched a new concept, which is the Madhya Pradesh Tourism Center. And we enabled technology into it, and they do a river safari, jungle safari. Now we have a group of kids who we call the Government of Kidzania, and we did a test with them of the concept. That how is the experience, how is the AR, VR, we have 8K visuals. They said, all that is great, but where is the interaction? And then we got these ideas from them. Why don't we have the animals? And then you have a quiz in the end where we have to judge, we have to guess the animals, and then we get scored, and then accordingly we can get paid. So they are so much involved that they want to be a part of the experience. So if you give them anything vanilla, they are over it.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenge for us has been the attention span.
Correct.
So we do every activity which is on average 20 minutes. So it has to be so powerful that it can have them engaged. Otherwise, they are just off to something else. So in summary, it is keep it real. They look for meaningful experiences. Another classic example is we have an experience which we discovered is where kids have to go and find the missing pets. So we have dogs and cats who are spread across in the city, and they do it with full gutso. So the learning has been that keep it very active, keep it immersive, give them the responsibility, and they are gung-ho about it.
Yeah, great point. What about you? What is the experience that you think has really boosted engagement with?
So when it comes to Gen Z, putting them in a single bracket is also becoming very difficult. So today Gen Z is from something like an 8-year-old to a 18, 20-year-old is in that Gen Z bracket. Right. And how a 8-year-old thinks to how a 13-year-old thinks to how that 18-year-old thinks is so very different. So when we are looking at it in these, one bracket is your preteen bracket. And preteens is something that we majorly focus on. And in this preteen bracket, what we've seen is they really want to do things which they see the 15, 16, 17-year-olds do. They want to do those things. They want to act like adults. They are really confused at that time. You talk about your 8, 9, 10, or even a 7 in a metro. What we've seen is as much as a 8 or a 9 from a smaller city. And we see that your risk profile is very different in these kids. So things like a passport where they can get a seal once they complete a ride, you won this ride, or you've overcome this ride. These kinds of sentiments play a lot, and they want to go back to school and show it to them. Now, when we were thinking, how do we reach these audiences? When we were thinking, how do we reach this particular audience? Then we thought, okay, we need to target their parents. And the more and more we started targeting that age group of parents, we said we should target people who are in the brackets of 40 to 50. And where are they? We saw that they were mostly on YouTube. And parents, and the more parents that we talk to, the one thing that we have realized is they don't want their kids to be on Instagram, but they are okay for them to be on YouTube. So then we increased our presence on YouTube. We increased our outreach on YouTube. And we see a lot. We send NPS messages at the end of the day and all. And then there is a comment which is there, which is well written, where they've given a rating and all. And then I have a team called VOCT, which is Voice of Customer team, where we try and understand the voice of the customer. So we give them a call and we ask, and they say, no, I didn't give it. I think it's my son who gave it. So kids have access to phone today. And to understand Gen Z, it's not at all possible. You look at a textbook and you do it. The best way would be first best way is to have a 7-year-old son. If you can't have a 7-year-old son, at least get some of these kids into your conference room. I have this, I have my team sitting with me, and then we ask them saying, okay, what do you guys like? And, they are like, we really want water, right? These kids, this age group, they're like, they really want water. Parents are like, if there is no water, we will not go to a resort. We will not go out. And then they want hygiene, and when it came to food, we completely changed our menu, because we used to have our traditional combos and all of that. When we were talking to these kids, they said, we want junk food. And parents were, we're talking to the parents, we're like, what do you guys eat when you go out? When you're looking, we want junk food. Right? I was so clear. It was so, like, it was not even a second of thought. Another huge change that we brought about in the last season was, for the last 3 years, we didn't change from these PET bottles of Pepsi to Coke cans, because PET bottles had higher margins. So we thought as business leaders and always said, no, why unnecessary? Nobody knows what they're doing. And then we were sitting with these Gen Zs and they said, hey, I don't want to drink out of a plastic bottle. It's so uncool. Right? I don't want to, we were talking to these preteens in my office and they said, no, uncle, I don't want to have bottles. Hey, see, that fellow will drink with a bottle. That's the kind of talk they're having. And then at that moment, I am telling my retail team saying, guys, just scrap all the plastic bottles that we have. We should not see anything in the park, and get your PET bottle, get your cans in. And then I'm like, okay, what do you guys drink? They're like, we drink Red Bull, we drink Sting.
Yeah,
and forever we didn't have this. Forever we didn't have this, right? And now we've got a tie-up with Red Bull, we've got Red Bull showing up. And these are the kinds of things which really play a big role.
No, I think you're highlighting a very important part, that Gen Zs especially are very particular about their choices. And somehow when we think about it, we are okay with substituting between different products, even though we might have strong preferences. Gen Z is not that. It's, to them, a lot of it is about social validation, defining who they are, and everybody understanding that. And so this is a very good example of that.
I'll just give you one example which we have not done. That there is a drink called Prime. I'm not sure how many of you know it. If you drink it, you will think it's the worst thing in the world.
Very expensive one.
And very expensive. And my team's like, we should have Prime in the park. Because every kid who comes in there, he's like, I want, oh, Prime is amazing. That's what they are saying. And we don't know this. And there is no way to learn this from a textbook. Whereas if you sit with these kids and ask them, hey, what do you think is cool? What do you think is nice?
I think Prime would get you footfalls.
I didn't know the word Prime.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So one of the things which we do really interesting in our organization is something to do with a lot of consumer research, right? When we say consumer research, a lot of things are to do with qualitative, quantitative. These are very, very generic in nature, but most of the organizations must be doing. But for us to specifically understand how the Gen Z generation is actually trending towards, what we actually do is, right from the leadership team to the employees at the ground, we interact on a regular basis with a lot of these customers. And interaction is specifically not related to why they do it. It is more about for us to understand how is the decision that they try and make in terms of coming back to our experience centers. One is that. The second one which we really do is in terms of understanding what are the emotional triggers and more importantly, what are the kind of cognitive biases which are currently there. So from a behavior science standpoint, if I have to really put it across, we try and speak to customers who visit our stores, plus we try and speak to customers who do not visit our stores. So for people who visit our stores, we try and understand what is it that's really working well, any areas of improvement that we need to see. And for people who do not visit our stores, we try and understand why they're not visiting our stores, maybe more to do with market context, competition, etc. Right? So these digital natives, based on whatever learnings, what we've imbibed over the last 3 to 6 months, we've launched something called as communities. All right? So community is a very platform-driven program for us. What ideally we do is, like every month, one specific store, right, which we pick and choose. And out of this store, there are some best-selling assets, like the machines which we currently have at stores. So based on these assets, we actually incentivize them to kind of come, do a lot of social proofing at the outlet, so that it just does not become a medium for us to generate sales, but it also helps us to kind of grow awareness and the brand consideration for the new set of audience which we really want to cater to. So I think if you do a very good consumer research right from understanding than just deploying regular surveys, ethnographic studies, I think that'll kind of help us and build a very strong disruptive proposition which we really want to kind of put it across all the concepts as well.
No, I think what I really like is talking to people who don't come to your setups, right? And I think a lot of times we have preconceived notions of who the product is for. and then we don't reach out to people who are not coming, and that also ends up being a problem. But let me ask you a different question, and we'll start flipping towards the audience and everything, and the things. How many of you have enabled YouTubers on your setups? Have you done that so far?
So we've done collabs with a lot of YouTubers.
No, not collabs. I'm saying like we know that there are aspirational Gen Zs and kids who want to be YouTubers. How many of you have said, okay, look, you may not have a YouTube channel as of now, but how about you use us and let's start co-creating a YouTube channel experience?
Not exactly that, but my marketing team started doing something similar now. What they've started doing is employee generated content. Right? And so before we take it to the masses, my own team, we have 400, 500 people. There's so many of them who are already content creators and local language content creators. And then my social media team is also there. They've been creating some very cool things. They make me a part of it as well. Right? They say, I just want you to turn up, sit there in the conference hall, and and we will tell you what to do, and you have to create this. So employee generated content is mind blowing. Like recently, the few 3-4, I think in the last couple of months, the kind of work that they've done on the employee generated side has been a lot of fun as well. And it's a lot of fun for the team also. I think one of the things that you said, the best form of alignment is involvement. So when they get involved in the larger picture, they are creating, not only operations, but they are helping people to come into the park. This creates a huge deal. But I've not thought about it like what you've said.
Okay.
So I'll just give an example of Kidzania, Chile. So they have this beautiful case study which was also on our wish list. So they had a supervisor. Supervisor are frontline staff, what we call them. And one supervisor, just like Ashwin was saying, they started experimenting with employee generated content. Okay, and she had the vibe. She had the flair. And now she has over 1 million followers on her Insta page, and the YouTube channel also shot up. So she was there with the company for 18 months, and then she's now become a full-time YouTuber. So that is something which they successfully experimented, and now they do it with hand-picked supervisors who can fit that bill.
Okay, nice.
So specifically not YouTubers in general, but one of the way the company's culture is built in is more to do with empowering employees to do a lot of user-generated content, right? Because employees are your very strong brand advocates or brand ambassadors, right? The cashiers who kind of deal with customers at the front end. So what we've done smartly is in terms of how do we kind of empower employees to create a lot of UGC content and then figure out in terms of mediums where they can actually promote. So one good thing what we've done is we've started creating separate groups based on the locations right now. So every customer who comes in, we generally create a channel for that particular store. So it becomes a group. Then what happens is, as and when we have a lot of events which are lined up, right? Every weekend, the long weekends and stuff, those events are promoted in a very smart way between those groups. So what happens there is the emotional bonding between customers and the team members become really strong. So every time the customer knows, okay, this is the person who's actually done the content for us, or he sent this promotion message to us, they kind of help us kind of come back. And also what happens is, in terms of memorability, it stays really, really strong. And I think, at least for our industry, I think while the audience is very too limited, we are only catering to, let's say, the upper market, the urban segment in general. So I think we probably cater to about 8 to 10% of the market right now. So hence, given the market condition, competition being very strong, retention is one of the key metrics which we really measure. And I think the culture is built in a manner that even the team members are empowered to do whatever it takes to get customers back to the outlet.
Thanks. I do have a question on challenges. Like, we've been talking about little things to do, but what stops us from going beyond what we are there? But before that, I want to open up the floor for at least a few questions. We are like way past time. So what I want to do is maybe take 2 or 3 questions from the audience towards the panelists or to me, and then, try to put the session to an end. And of course, I think all the panelists and I will also be around after the thing. And if you want to talk after that also, we can take discussions off the floor as well. Yeah, I think there was one question over there. Is there a mic to pass or can you talk louder?
Morning, gentlemen. So I have a pretty, concise question. I basically provide some services, extra services to the water parks, and I want to understand what exactly can we do when we are inside a water park. We are not a water park where we can do the promotions part, but we are a part of the water park, individual part. So can you guide me on that, please?
Is this question directed at someone or?
No, it's open to the panel.
Are you talking about sales inside a water park?
Yes.
Okay. I love this topic. And my head of retail sales is also here. And but yeah, I love this, and I've been passionately focused on it. In the last 1 year, I think we have 2x our in-park revenues across retail, across food, all of these channels. I think primarily what has worked for us is giving the ownership to the boy who's there at the store level. That has created a huge onus of the kind of growth that we've had. Like for example, I'll give you such a small thing. Our wave pool kiosk, which used to do 0.5 rupees per customer, 0.3 rupees per customer for the last 3-4 years. I think last week, if I'm not wrong, Sunil, we did 15 rupees per customer, right? Which is a 30x improvement in that store, a store which we were thinking we should close down. So I think point number one, just real focus on that number on a week over week basis has helped us tremendously. Second thing, putting the ownership in the name, in the staffs, in the making the staff accountable for that particular store has been incredible, because you will not think for 25 years, and I tell this to my father as well, for 25 years we never sold tubes at that location. Now there was this one boy, so every week we saw 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and there was this 1 week where it jumped from that to 7 rupees per customer. And I thought, okay, it was a fluke. And then I called, then next week we saw again 7-8 rupees per customer. I say, what is this? What is this entire business? You know, imagine going from 0.3 to 7. It's unheard of in any place, right? So, you know, what this boy had done was, we'd given them the freedom to kind of go out and say, what are the other retail items you think we can sell here, which will do well. And so when we started focusing on this, every individual store thinks like a business owner, right? So he thinks about his GP percentage, he thinks about his, we have a metric where there are 2-3 matrices where we measure. And so basically making him the business owner has played a huge role. And that's my biggest takeaway in the last couple of years, is that how do we enable people to become business owners within our own organization, right? And I have seen this again and again. Like for example, my photography at my snow park was, we used to hover around 6 rupees, 7 rupees. You know, can you imagine what was my number last week? 100 rupees per customer. My 100 rupees per customer from photography. It's unimaginable. I you know what I asked my team today? I say, we are not looting them, right? Like customers are not complaining about this. This is what I ask. And in not even in a negative sense, but just giving them ownership plays a huge role. Like I'll tell you, I have a Gorilla Cafe where we were doing 3 rupees per customer. And then the boy said, no sir, we should create an AI generated image and we should put a board where a girl is eating a pizza. I said, okay, put it. You know, that store jumped from 3 rupees per customer to 10 rupees per customer. That area today is giving us 50 rupees per customer. Which is, if you're specifically talking about revenue inside the park, then giving ownership to people and making them responsible for their store's revenue on a week-on-week basis is a game changer and is unimaginable.
Just to add on Ashwin's point as well, one of the things which you may be doing is, don't look at it from a linear standpoint, right? Look at it from I would say a flywheel standpoint. Basically because you anyways have customers walking in, so you need to kind of create mediums for you to kind of address the supply demand. So one way to kind of look at it is your feedbacks, which is currently there. A lot of feedbacks, you may be speaking to customers, getting those feedbacks. So maybe based on those feedbacks, you need to create a strategy which will help you address those gaps in that particular market where you're not able to get those customers, right? So look at it from a feedback perspective. Try building your strategy around those customers' feedback and then build it on the flywheel. So it could be more to do with price, for example. A lot of people may say it's expensive, right? Then you'll need to figure out what is it that you really want to fix. And then based on the feedback, if you start taking actions, I think probably you'll be in a better position.
Really appreciate that. Just had one more follow-up question on
Oh,
this.
okay. Can we take the follow-up off the floor? I'll just take one more question and then we can, yeah, we're just running short on time. Yeah.
All right.
Hi Tarandeep, hi Ashwin, hi Alistair, hi Madhu. So my question is around footfall management and basically about, just like you mentioned, footfall is no longer just about volume but depth of engagement, right? So how do you ensure that people are staying longer at your venue? So let's say they've purchased ticket, they're here for a couple of hours, but as a park owner, you want to maximize their stay in time. Right, so maybe for an FEC it might be different, but for a water park it might be different, and Kidzania runs on a different model, so it's a completely different. So what are your thoughts on this? Would love to understand.
So I might have a different perspective than what they have. So
Sure.
my perspective is, I think in today's world, engagement is giving them what they want, not necessarily saying they have to stay longer per se. There might be people who are thrill seekers, they want to hit all the thrill rides and then go home. They may have very different things. So engagement is making sure they use everything that they want to use. And I think my question follow-up was on operational challenges and everything else, but feel free to give your thoughts as well.
All right. So, okay, I'll take a hit on this. Okay. So, one of the way you kind of engage customers. Okay, so we've been testing something over the last 2 months, right? There's a company called Tango AI. Which is more to do with sensory understanding of what these customers do, what is the kind of dwell time which they actually spend at the store. But one thing is very clear, so different people behave to different messages differently. The category affinity is completely different. The demographics are completely different. So even the time of the day is different depending on what amount of time they have actually to engage at the store. So one thing which we may need to kind of relook at is in terms of habit formation, right? Because it's not a one-time event where people just come in, step into the store, and they never come back to you. The idea is to kind of understand where that habit formation actually happens. So a lot of data science-led activities have helped us in terms of understanding. So one thing very broadly from our industry perspective, at least from the company which I work in, is we've understood after a lot of experiments, what we've done with the growth team, that every customer has a certain hump that he needs to cross, right? And for him to cross that hump, how long does it take? So we've identified if the customer comes to us, let's say 4 times in 6 months period, that means we actually have a stable customer right now. The retention remains really, really strong. So there are some times where these customers do not come back to you, so hence you need to build a hand-holding journey. Not just giving them rewards and incentives, but talking to them about what has been the historical behavior in the past, what kind of affinity did they actually do, and then based on that, you kind of incentivize them to cross that hump as well. So I think that will kind of help us increase, one, the dwell time at the store, and number 2, a lot of customers' reputations happening in, and more importantly, it's not about just getting customers back, it's about how are you shaping their behavior at the outlet when they are there, right? Eventually, you're trying to build joy, you're trying to build the emotional need, which is fun aspect of what the business stands for. So I think that is what is very important to kind of understand at this point of time.
Oh, that's a fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll just give you 2 cents with what we've done at Kidzania. So globally, Kidzania used to have fixed shifts. So they used to have a 5-hour shift in the morning, then take a break, and then again have a 5-hour shift later in the afternoon. So then when we discovered, one was through formal research, which we did with parents, and then a lot of talking. Parents wanted independence in terms of when they want to come, when they want to leave. and we are in metros where you just cannot plan. You know, people were not buying tickets online because they were not ready to commit. They don't know whether they will reach at 9 o'clock or not. So let's leave it for later. So then we started with a flexi shift, which is from any time you come, you can make a 5-hour shift. So likewise, we've experimented with Flexi 5, we've experimented with Flexi 3, last 3 hours, and all this has been done keeping in mind what the customer wants, which you can get through either formal research or through a lot of talking with your TG. These are insights which you have to pick and experiment. I keep telling my team, don't get into discounting, do price packaging, and experiment a lot. Our business is very dynamic. And second is, classic case for all of us is how we maximize our revenue through footfalls. So we can do 10 people at 100 rupees or we can do 100 at 10 rupees. And here is where your follow-up question with respect to efficiency, how we can get the maximum result, comes into picture. But what we believe is you have to keep the experience always at the superficial level. You know, ensure that you give the best delivery. So we've had cases where we have crowd, we have to do a sold out. We are very, very strict that if we cross a certain threshold, even if we have visitors, we will not take them. Because otherwise it completely deorients your brand. So there is a lot of mix and match which you have to do, but if I have to give you my 2 cents, you should experiment a lot. There will be 50-60% of your pricing strategy, packaging strategy, which will be fixed, but you need to play with the other part.
Okay, so
Can I add one point?
yes.
If you saw one thing, Professor, all of us are saying we don't know what we are doing. The customer knows, so go talk to the customer. That's what I think every conversation of ours, every answer of ours, all three of us have been, hey, we spoke to the customer and this is what we saw. We spoke to the customer and this is what we saw. One point about engagement, we used to do dance shows and things on stage, and we realized that today's generation and everybody sees the best of the best dance shows on their mobile phone. So for me to get the best dancers in the world on stage is not possible. But what really works is when I can get the audience to come on stage and dance with the dancers. You should see there are 100 phones out there. People are clicking their kids because they are dancing on stage, right? Everybody is a celebrity. Those events play such a huge role. Magic shows where, you know, the audience comes on stage plays a huge role. Everywhere where engagement happens, where it's not a performance that somebody else watches, right? That day is out because you get the best video on your mobile. So why would you want to watch this, you know, school kids or whoever dancing on stage? Whereas if it's your own kids dancing, right? I know because I have a 3-year-old son, you know, and when in his school performance, when all of these shenanigans go on, I'm ready to watch him, but no other kid am I ready for, right? So when your family goes on stage, that's the best feeling in the world, and that gives us the longest retention, longest amount of time. The other side of it is get Ed Sheeran, which is not always possible.
Yeah, well, or now Arijit also is in the mix. Okay, so before we close it, just a one-liner on what is, like we have agreed engagement, delight, all of these are key factors. What is stopping for all of you from getting there to the best that you can? What is one challenge that you can think of that's hindering your pursuit of delight?
I think, if I can go first, for a long time we were in this pursuit of just getting the basics right? Because when you are catering to such a diaspora of audience, requirements being different, food habits being different, and just measurement setups not being there. But today we are at a place where our NPS is at an all-time high. We measure across the 4 verticals that I talked about. We are looking at our ratings across each of these verticals. You go on my Google reviews, people are like, my God, these stuff are so great, right? So now when your basics are taken care, now we are starting to think about delight. We are starting to bring in these stories that we see and how do we replicate them. That's the way that we are looking at this challenge in the next couple of years, because it has to be scalable. If it's a one-off thing that comes from the owner or from the management, it's not sustainable. It has to be ground up. That's when you know that your system's working, your process is working, and then it'll take a life of its own.
So for me, I would say it is a challenge and also a big opportunity, is about people. So I don't think, budgets is a very subjective thing. I think people is the most important aspect of our business. So whatever we spoke about delight, whatever you spoke about delight, it only happens when the delivery is not mechanical. If I have a person there who's just, doing the mechanical rhetoric, giving the experience, it is not going to go anywhere. And with due respect, especially in places like Kidzania, where we have a role play experience, which is done by the frontline staff, it is purely on that person, how the person interacts with the child, how the parent from outside is observing, which is going to make or break it. So what we believe is the opportunity lies in training, keeping them in the right state, in the right field. Like we say, customers should give up wise. Same thing happens for us that, you have to give them right training. You have to equip them, be it monetary benefits, be it even non-monetary benefits. Because that is what is going to take forward
Right.
our industry.
Yeah, rightly said. Yeah.
All right. So I think one of the things, India as such is a lot of micro segments are currently there, right? It's a heterogeneous country. So I think a lot of things are to do with variety, what people actually want. So I personally believe that diversification is one area of opportunity that can really be worked on. We as an organization has been very, very strong over the last 2 years. And what we've just done is, over the last month, we've launched a new concept in Delhi, which is Fun Block, specifically for kids between 2 to 6 years of age. While we did have Fun City, which was about 2 to 13 years of age group, which we cater to, but we thought that there's still a lot of white space which is actually available in the market, which we can actually cater to, and just not restricted to just kids as a segment, but you can actually cater to multiple demographics across the country.
Oh, excellent. I think all three of you have hit very key points, right? One is, before you start thinking in terms of scale, before you start thinking in terms of delight, you need to have your basics set up. You need to understand that there is a process behind the whole madness. It's not just these one-off moments. You need to actually have a proper process of measurement, proper process of design, everything set up before you can start making changes. And then the other point that you raised, I think, is very fundamental, right? I think especially in the hospitality and the industry you are in, I think the people who interact finally with the customer are such a big part of the delivery ecosystem. So the whole culture, those stakeholders becomes very important. It's not just about the customer, right? It's also about the person who's delivering that experience and everybody else involved in that ecosystem. And I think that's a great point. And then the third one that you were talking about is the beauty of India, right? Where I think the West talks about heterogeneity. In India, we are truly heterogeneous across so many different segments, right? And then catering to not just across ages, but across economic strata, across differences in culture. All of this, I think, is where the future lies. So thank you all for a wonderful discussion. I hope a lot of you gained some value from this session. So just to help you just think about what we have discussed overall, right? So I started off with talking about delight and how there are aspects to delight which you should focus on, both from an engagement perspective and from a retention perspective. We talked about a lot of behavioral anchors that can essentially help you start thinking about it from a more long-term perspective. Footfall should not be thought about as just in terms of engagement, but retention as well. And it applies across the board. I think we should be thinking in terms of designing memories. And there are lots of simple behavioral aspects that you can. I think the panel had an excellent discussion on how it translates into their field of work, from retention, from journeys, from listening to customers, understanding their perspective, especially when it comes to Gen Z. I think a lot of things that happens with Gen Z, like I'm learning all the time when I'm teaching these kids on how to curate sessions. And so, especially in businesses nowadays, I think they have a lot of good ideas which are very different from how we think about things. And a lot of them are very cost effective, by the way. I think if we were to just listen to them, we'll find out that a lot of their suggestions can be very easily implementable. especially in today's digital world. So thank you all, and hopefully you had a lot of points to take away. So.
Please be there. Thank you very much, all the panel and Professor Madhu. Now I would request Mr. Sumit Ahuja, Telangana State Chairman IAAPI, to be on stage, please, to felicitate the panelists. Sumit, please. I would like, thanks a lot. Please. Professor Madhu, thanks a lot for your wonderful session. It has brought in a lot of new insights. It has triggered a lot of things, and it was a very engaging session by yourself and of course through the interaction of the panelists.
Thank you.
All delegates are requested to be seated, and now I would request Mr. Rajiv Jalnapurkar to take up the stage for the next session. The most interesting session probably. Come.